Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, by request, we're going to be having a look at another Smith & Wesson J-frame revolver today. This one happens to be the 351 PD Lite, and this is a .22 Magnum. It's a nice little revolver with some good features, and we're going to see how it stacks up as a concealed carry firearm, and we're going to get into all that in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and you just haven't had a chance to do so until now and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen there, or if on a mobile device, you can just scroll down below and hit subscribe that way. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, Smith & Wesson 351 PD, which stands for Personal Defense. I really like these little small J-frame revolvers. You know, when you're dressing light, or if you're just really focused on comfort for concealed carry, these are so hard to beat. And if you look at previous videos where I cover some of these revolvers, you'll hear me say that. But if you spend some time and shoot one and you try carrying one, you may come to the same conclusion. But let me use another smaller one as our starting comparison here. So I have another J-frame that's a really favorite gun of mine, and that's this little 642 airweight that's 38 special. Now, different people will argue about calibers that are effective for carry or not. I try not to make that argument here because to me it's really up to the individual, what they're comfortable with, what they want to carry, because at the end of the day you need to carry a gun that you can shoot well, that you're confident with, that the gun's going to perform and you can do responsible shooting with it. And if that means a lower caliber, then that's probably for you. But so you got 5 rounds of 38 in this, and you have we'll get more to this in specs, but this is 7 rounds of .22 Magnum, and for some people they'd rather have 7 rounds of one than 5 of the other. But you can see these are so small and they're so light. They do such a good job with these. And just to give you a little comparison, there's another series of guns that I really like. The Ruger LCRs are really nice guns. But just kind of as a comparison here, this is a .22 long rifle, keep in mind. But it's an 8-shot .22 long rifle. But if you look at it, you've got a little bit more bulk in this gun. I mean, fundamentally, it's not huge compared to the other one, but you got a lot more, width, mainly here in the trigger guard area, and of course it's got a bigger grip. Now, these are both great guns, but just to give you an idea, you can have 8 rounds of .22 long rifle here, you can have 7 rounds of .22 Magnum. And if for those of you who aren't familiar, they are not the same thing. Your .22 Magnum is a much larger and more potent cartridge than .22 long rifle. We're not going to get into all the specifications there, but I just wanted to point that out for those of you that aren't really that familiar with it. But this gives you a good idea of the size of firearm this is going to be, and after all, that's always our starting point for a concealed carry gun, is going to be the comfort. Alright, let's jump right into the features here, but before we do, let's take a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the Smith & Wesson 351 PD Lite for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So I'll do this in the typical fashion, which is kind of a top-down review. Now, J-frames, these typically don't have, fancy sights. On the 642 I was talking about, you just have the notch that's cut into the top, and then you have your little metal front. There's not a whole lot, it's all the same color. So it's not a real fancy sighting system. But once again, as we'll talk about, defensively, this is not a firearm. These are not the kind of firearms that you're going to be doing a lot of precision shooting from a long distance. Just keep that in mind. You're talking about, a firearm that, in this case, has a very tiny barrel, like under 2 inches. So it's definitely a up-close and personal type use weapon. But if you look at it, you'll see this one does have the fiber optic. And for me, that makes it a little bit better because you've got the black of the frame, you've got that channel, but then you've got that contrasting orange dot right there. And to me, that gives you a pretty decent sight picture. It's still going to be close up, but I think it's good. I like that. Of course, this is a double action, single action, so you do have an exposed hammer, so you can pull the hammer back if you want to go into single action mode. You can pull the trigger that way, or you can do a full double action pull. It's whatever you want to do. But a lot of people who carry these type of firearms for defense, there's different opinions. Like I carry a lot of hammerless guns because I don't want the hammer to snag, and I'm totally okay with the trigger pull being a little bit heavier because to me that's kind of a built-in safety. Double action trigger pull is always going to be a heavier trigger pull than single action, so I'm definitely committed to that trigger pull in double action. A lot of people though like to go straight to a cocked hammer and have that lighter touch for single action, and of course a lot of people feel like they get a lot more accurate shooting that way. So to each their own. That's a personal decision you have to make. Your cylinder release is right here, just like any typical J-frame. You push it, comes right out. Once again, this is a 7-shot 22 Magnum. And of course your trigger. This trigger feels pretty good. It's typical of a J-frame trigger. Most of my J-frames, I think, have got pretty decent triggers on them. The ones I have that do have hammers, I tend to obviously like the single action trigger a little bit better because it's really light, really crisp, and you get really good accurate results within the expectations of the range that you would shoot this gun. But I don't think the double action pull is bad. I'm very comfortable, as I said, with that being the only option that I have. It's got a very nice wood grip. It feels really good. Sometimes wooden grips, to me, they feel too slick. And I normally have an expectation of wanting either some kind of a pattern or a rubber grip that I feel I can get a better handle on. Now, this one isn't too slick, even though there's no pattern. I have a lot of wood grips, like you can see on that, Kimber. You've got some pretty pronounced patterning, and a lot of times I'll change those out for more aggressive grips anyway, like some Hogue's G10s or something like that. But if you look at this, it looks very smooth, but it actually feels pretty good in the hand. It doesn't really feel like it's that, it doesn't feel as slick as it looks, I guess is the best way of putting it. But once again, you're talking about a aluminum frame. It's very light. It has a stainless steel barrel. You have your external hammer, high visibility front sight, and 7-round capacity. So that is your basic overview of the features on that firearm. So talking about range performance, I touched on this a little bit when we were talking about the feature section. I think people need to have realistic expectations out of their handguns. And the reason I bring that up is because I don't care if it's this Smith or whether it's, this Ruger or whatever you have. If you're carrying a firearm that has a, tiny barrel like this, I don't care what kind of gun it is or what type of cartridge it is, you're not going to get the same kind of accuracy over a long distance that you're going to get out of a longer barrel. And if you've shot any firearms at all, you already know this. But the reason I'm emphasizing this is that when we talk about how a gun performs, when I take a small gun like this, I always evaluate that performance based on a realistic range. And for me, I always practice at about 21 feet defensively. So I'll set up a target 21 feet away. I'll shoot multiple, full cylinders of ammo and see what I can do. And with a gun like this, typically just like any under 2-inch revolver, I can make a, 1.5-inch group pretty easy. at that range. You know, you need to kind of focus, because when you're shooting a really small gun like that, sometimes, especially if your sights are, you know, like this, where you have you got a short sight radius, if you want to call that a radius, but looking through that area, minor little adjustments over a shorter distance can make larger errors. So if you focus on your shooting and you get a good smooth trigger pull, and you're doing making the best shots that you can be pretty accurate with a gun like this within that reasonable distance. But I would never take something like this and do any kind of long distance shooting. So I rate this pretty much like any other J-frame. It's a good shooting, reliable firearm. I use primarily CCI for my 22s and 22 Magnums. Every once in a while I'll get into something else, but CCI has been probably the most reliable cartridge that I use for 22 in either designation. So that's what we went with. Like I say, it is a revolver, and so it does have fewer question marks for safety when it comes to, errors. One thing I've always liked about a revolver is that, if you take a shot and for some bizarre reason it doesn't go bang, well, you can take another shot. You can just move to the next cylinder. And of course, you want to give it a moment if it's one of those odd situations where you have a round that didn't go off right away. That's pretty rare. I think that if I was in that situation and I pulled the trigger and it didn't go bang, I would just pull the trigger again to get to a round that worked. Because if I'm pulling the trigger in the first place, I'm obviously facing some pretty serious danger at that point, or I wouldn't have it out in the first place. But like all J-frames I've looked at before, it is accurate, it's reliable, and it's not complicated. And I think when you're looking for a concealed carry firearm, in many instances, that's really what you need to focus on. And so I think it's a great option. All right, so what's it like to carry the 351 Personal Defense Airlite as a concealed carry gun? Well, if you've watched my videos before with little J-frames, you've probably seen me take a 642 like this and, drop it in a sticky holster, because I will very often pocket carry a gun like this, and I feel pretty good about it. I wear pants that I have a good enough pocket to where this literally just disappears, and there's no profile, and I have a nice, capable firearm, and to me, extreme comfort. Well, complication here is that, yes, I can carry something like this in a sticky, but I have that external hammer. Now, I don't really like having a hammer in something like this, just on the off chance that it snags or something goes wrong. I'm probably going to go with something different. So, there's tons of manufacturers where you can get, more precision type holsters. Like this is an actual custom leather holster for some of my smaller revolvers. I would much rather carry, something like this. That's made that it's got light retention, because there is a snugness here around the trigger guard. I'd rather carry something like this where I don't have to worry about that trigger getting caught or snagged on anything, but yet it's still protected. As you can see, the firearm is not in a position where I'm really worried about it. If I'm going for this firearm, obviously I'm going to be aware of where that hammer is and things of that nature. So this is probably something more like what I would use. There are other, smaller inside the waistband options too. Now I have some like this little Galco here. The orientation of this is a little bit different, and it covers perfectly right up to the edge. You see that? Right to the edge of the hammer. Now I've carried this one and been perfectly happy, because there's no way it's going to catch, because it actually is completely set in the holster with the edge of the hammer in the clear. So this is something else I think that's a good option. And there, like I say, everyone, there's so many like this. There's hundreds of little holsters like this. I just have a lot of stuff on hand, and I pick and try things that are in my arsenal. And I usually end up ordering something special for the gun, but something like this works. But it's so light The funny thing is, I was talking about, a gun like this versus the 642. Well, as light as the 642 is, it's heavier than this one. And of course, we're talking about, 38 Special versus your 22 Magnum. So by the time the 642 is loaded, well, it's already heavier than the other gun, but the ammunition, a lot of people just don't think about the weight of the ammunition. And by the time you get the 642 loaded up, it's going to be a lot heavier than this. For some people, the weight and the comfort is everything. So if you're as comfortable with 7 rounds of 22 Magnum as you are with 5 rounds of 38 Special, what you're going to find is you can do that with a lot less weight on your hip, if you do choose that option. So either way, it's extremely comfortable. There's a lot of good options. I can carry this gun all day long in just about any configuration and not even aware that I have it, because that's just how light it is. Overall impressions of the 351 Personal Defense Airlight. Well, you're not going to get me to say anything bad about a J-frame revolver. I just think that they're, good guns. They have a good history. This is a gun that's been around since 1950, and of course it's evolved and, over time. But we're talking about a firearm that has a lot of different variety, different combinations, whether you want hammer or hammerless, different finishes, different calibers. It stood the test of time, and to me, they've been very reliable. Now, for some people, price might be an issue. This particular gun has an MSRP of around $840. And I've heard a lot of people say they have a stopping point on how much they'll spend on a firearm. Some people say it's $300 or $400. Some people are $500 or $600, whatever the case may be. And you have to respect that, because everyone has different budgets that they're operating under, and they got different priorities where their money needs to go. I don't think that the J-frames are overpriced. I never have. And the reason I say that is because I base a gun's value on, if I pay a lot for it, like a lot of money, I expect a lot. But if something to me is priced, high but not ridiculous, what I expect is reliability and good workmanship and a good service life. And the J-frames to me have done that. They continue to do that. To me, it's just hard to go wrong with something like this. Now, the other reason that I favor these quite a bit is because just size. Forget about how well they work and how many options that you have. When you're considering a firearm for concealed carry, you have got to, be realistic about what you're actually going to carry with you. I see people who show off the most ridiculous setups. They say, yeah, this is my everyday gun, and they have some gigantic gun with an optic and a light and all these different things, an extended magazine, and the gun is huge. And I never actually see them carry that gun. Usually when I bump into them, and hey man, you got your so-and-so, whatever the gun is, and they don't even have it. No, not today, I'm dressed a little light and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's fine. But to me, your personal defense firearm isn't doing you any good at home in the safe. So whenever I get ready to leave and I select a firearm, very often I'm going to go to something like a J-frame. I've mentioned before many times that something like the simple 642 has been with me on my journey so many days I can't even begin to count them, because my confidence level with that firearm is so high. And the caliber, I'm completely fine carrying 38 Special and only having 5 rounds of it. No problem at all. I figure that if I can't get out of trouble with that setup, then, I'm probably in too much trouble. Now, different people are going to have different opinions about what they're comfortable with, and you need to go with what you are comfortable with. And if your comfort level means, 15 rounds of 9mm, that's what you need to carry. But once again, that's the kind of thing that you'll determine after you train and get proficient and know what you want. But overall, if you are a person who is comfortable with something like this, if you like revolvers, you like J-frames, and you're a believer in the 22 Magnum cartridge, I don't see any way that you can go wrong, because this is an absolute win. It's a win as far as weight. It's a win as far as comfort. And of course, it's a win for reliability. So if you've considered adding another revolver to your arsenal for concealed carry, I can't come up with a reason to tell you not to look at this one. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for today. Once again, we appreciate you as always. We'll be back very soon with another video for you. So until that time, everyone, please stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.